Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 56 of the Stomp the Bus show. And after a terrible start to the season, the Sun Devils suffer another loss, but this one felt much different than the other two. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Harris, alongside Colton Dodgson. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast app of choice, and let's get into it. Colton, that was a fun game. That was a really fun game against USC.
Yeah, I was gonna say by far the most watchable game of the season, I would say, which was progress, I would think. Yeah, a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to watch. A lot of fun to watch for assorted reasons, depending on what your vested interest in that game was.
Hey, they easily
Um,
covered.
yeah, the easily covered as home dogs, but a lot of points too, which is never a bad thing.
Yeah. First game of Dillingham calling plays, and you could tell the thing I really liked about this game, the approach was like there was a level of desperation and aggressiveness that that's what this team needs. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
even with the like even with the Dillingham calling plays and just better offensive execution, you could still tell the offensive line injuries were still there. Like Drew Pine I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he got sacked a good amount of times. Some of that was on him. But I liked how they worked around it, for the most part. Like, you're not going to get a Cam Scatabo breaks two tackles in the open field to score a touchdown on a reception every game, but like, you know, that kind of stuff happens. And I liked how much they use Scatabo. I mean, he's an awesome player, man. Like he really did it all.
Right, and I mean they're coming off a game in which they scored 0 points. So, Scadaboo scoring at any point is good, let alone scoring against USC. And the story on USC coming into the season was great offense, and it was kind of the tail last year too. Great offense, vulnerable defense, but we hadn't seen that. I would say since they opened up against Nevada, or wait,
San
they played
Jose.
in yeah, they played in week 0.
Yeah.
Since that week 1 game against Nevada, they had the game against
San
Stanford where
Jose
they held.
State.
Well, they had played
Oh, right. Right.
Nevada too. I'm just saying, like, beyond the week 0 game. That's the
Right.
last time that defense looked vulnerable. Um, but playing Stanford and then whoever they had after Stanford, I'm drawing the blank on that. But the point being that defense hasn't looked vulnerable in quite some time, and I think they were starting to get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, and that's kind of where we saw that USC 34.5 come from. But um,
Right.
ASU did what play desperate, and that's what you have to do when a team like USC comes to your home stadium for the last time. So they put up much more of a fight than I thought they would. USC 34.5 was a pretty trendy pick for some people. But yeah, keeping it close. I mean, this game wasn't out of reach until the very end. I'll be
Yeah.
honest, watching the game, it never really felt like it was one they were going to win. I was never watching that game thinking, okay, we have a shot to pull the upset here. Granted, I had some other motivations for some other rooting interests in this game, but regardless, you're never watching it thinking like, oh, I at least from my perspective, and I don't know how you felt about it, like ASU could win this game. I don't think it ever felt that way, but it felt like they were much more competent than they've looked under Dillingham to this point against the best team by far that they've played, and quite possibly will play this season.
Yeah. No, that is a perfect way of describing it because that's exactly what I was feeling up in the stands. I was just, because like, look, ASU was in this game until pretty much like a few minutes left in the fourth quarter. Whenever USC got that last touchdown to make it a 14-point game, But yeah, Taj Washington 45-yard touchdown pass. 7 minutes left in the game. That was the kicker. But I mean, it was 7-0, 7-7, 14-7, 14-10, 21-10, 21-13. Like USC gets a field goal, 24-13, 24-21, 27-21, 35-21, 35-28. Like ASU hung around in this game. They did not make it easy. They had 5, separate scoring drives. Obviously, 2 were field goals, but it and you're right that like I don't think many ASU fans like as they were watching that game be like, oh, ASU actually is capable of winning this game. But like the score, like they kept it close for a long time. And if you do like that's one of those games if you play it 100 times, ASU probably wins like 8 of them. But they kept it close. Like they kept it close. And if you keep it close, like you never know what's gonna happen, And so it was just such an encouraging performance, honestly. And the whole time I was thinking like if ASU could like bottle up everything they had from this game, which by the way, they did not play perfectly in either. This is a game Drew Pine threw a pick, took some bad sacks. And like defense had a few plays they probably want back, although not too many though. I think the defense really showed out in this game. But just by keeping it this close, it just showed me that like one, Dillingham's message is getting through to these guys. They aren't like quitting or anything. He's a good play caller, as we saw at Oregon. And I just was thinking, like, if you could just bottle up everything from this game, from this ASU performance, that was an uneven performance, and just put it into the next game, like if you just could replicate the performance into all the rest of the games we play, then this season starts to feel a lot different,
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. You never knew. I mean, you kind of said it last week. Had they hit rock bottom after that Fresno State game, and
felt like it.
Yeah, it definitely did feel like it. I agree with you, and I mean, if the thing about rock bottom, especially so early in the season, if that was their rock bottom, the only way to go is up, right?
Right.
And this definitely felt like a step in the right direction. I can't remember what analogy Dillingham used, but he mentioned, I think it was bamboo. He's talking about bamboo or whatever he said, where, it's that corny football guy stuff that you hear. Nick Sirianni did the same thing, talking about like watering the pavement and eventually a weed busts through, whatever. It's the classic football guy, like we have to put in the work now to see the results later. And you kind of roll your eyes at it a little bit. But I mean, even in a season where there's obviously been a lot more lowlights than highlights to this point, I would say. If you're getting performances like this one, even on a somewhat sporadic basis, regardless of what's going on, you don't want to see any regression, I guess. So let me rephrase that. You don't really want to see them take any steps back, but if they can build on something like this, I mean, keeping it close against a team that was projected to beat them by 5 touchdowns, I mean, this is definitely something to build on. And I think the progress we see from this point on is going to be a better representation on if the bamboo is actually being watered.
There you go.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's totally. And one thing from this game on offense, especially, is like the people who like we talked about before the season is like these are playmakers on offense. They all showed up. Cam Scatabo, I mean, Augie, like this dude was incredible. 20 carries, 111 yards. Everyone saw the 52-yard touchdown pass that he caught. And I mean, in the stadium just reacting, that was the most like hype I've been in a day. Like that was just like such an awesome play. 2 passes for 42 yards. And by the way, he almost hit Kyson Brown in the end zone for another touchdown pass. So that's why I say like they didn't even play a perfect game and they still like was close with USC for most of the game. Obviously Elijah Badger has a touchdown pass, 9 catches, 88 yards. And then Jalen Conyers didn't have like his best game, but 5 catches for 71 yards. Like that's good. Like I'll take it, especially if it's your third leading receiver for that game too. So I think that like just getting continuity with having your best playmakers have the ball.
Yeah, and I mean, even in a
I'm
game
going to
where right, even in a game where Guillory doesn't have a catch, like Guillory did not show up on this on the box score at all. He had no catches in this game. He was targeted like 6 or 7 times. I was looking back at it and I'm like, what happened? Did he get hurt? But no, he played into the fourth quarter. They just couldn't connect with him. So Badgers and Conyers and
Badgers.
Scattaboo. Yeah, I know. I know. Badger, Conyers, and Scattaboo really just shouldering the offensive load here, which is, I mean, no, I don't know what anybody else was going to do, but those three guys really, really stepped up. And I mean, Pine looked solid too. There was moments where obviously he looked a little shaky. We've seen shaky quarterback play this entire season with obviously all of the challenges that they've run into with, the Rashada injury and everything else that they're dealing with
Right.
there. Bourget hurting his foot. Um, but I mean, Pine made some plays in this game. That ball to Badger in the end zone, all of those things. So obviously, Scattaboo put this entire offense on his back, but at the very least, we saw kind of what we expected from Pine in terms of that guy that's not going to take over a game and win it, but won't necessarily lose you the game either.
Yeah.
Like a kind of a high floor guy, which is what I expected out of him coming into this season if we were going to see him. And I think he lived up to that a little bit in this game. Not perfect, but wasn't the reason they lost the game by any means either.
Yeah, Pine is high floor guy is a good way that you described him because I don't think he was like great in this game, but he also like he looked so bad against Fresno State, and clearly there was an element of rust there. Like he looked like someone who like hadn't played football in years and like
Hmm.
got elevated from an intramural team or something. Like he just didn't look, just wasn't ready for contact at all. Looked much better in this game. Of course, he suffers or like he's not going to be playing against Cal this weekend. It's going to be
Right.
Bourget. Um, but in the game, he just looked like a competent Power Five quarterback. He didn't look great, but that's what like you said, that's what we expected from him this year. And I think the fact that he was able to look that way is encouraging in the sense of like Dillingham was creating plays that featured him well, and obviously he can't do anything about the lack of protection, and that's why he got sacked 8 times, or part of the reason. Some of it was just him holding onto the ball. But the offense looked like a competent offense, and they didn't even have great quarterback play. They just had like solid Power Five standard level quarterback play, and that's an encouraging thing too, because if this game was like Drew Pine was awesome and that he was completing all these like tight window throws to Badger and Conyers down the field, like that would still be awesome. But I think the fact that they were able to have such a great offensive game and the quarterback was like average, I think that's a good sign moving into the future, especially since he's not going to like Pine's going to be out for a little bit. Now it's Bourget who's coming in, and like hopefully Bourget can stay healthy because I don't want to test that theory with Jacob Conover in there, but
Yeah,
um,
you can only run through so many quarterbacks,
yeah.
especially on a team that's still trying to build something here.
That is,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, but I mean the offense looked a little more explosive. They had eight passing plays with
Oh,
that gained 15 or more yards, 5 rushing plays that gained 10 or more yards. It wasn't like, and again, that's more of the USC. I think this was some regression to the mean a little bit defensively for USC. I don't think that they're a great defensive team at all, but they had played solid defense the last 2 weeks. I think this was some positive. This was some progression for ASU offensively, and maybe that can be attributed to Dillingham taking over the play calling this week and some continuity between him and Pine. Now that Pine had a week of prep as the guy for USC. maybe we saw some of that continuity, which is kind of unfortunate considering we won't see Pine for a while now. You kind of hit on that a little bit. So hopefully that continuity carries over to Bourguet, and they can kind of pick up where they left off a little bit. I have to admit it was a limited sample in that Fresno State game before Bourguet got hurt, but it also wasn't very encouraging what we saw from
No.
Bourguet before he got hurt. So hopefully that was just chalk it up to early season stuff. But I guess we'll see. We don't really. He's going to be the guy. We're not going to see Rashada or Pine for quite some time. So
Yeah.
it's Bourguet, and we'll see what happens.
The thing with Bourguet, I trust him to be like what he was last year. And you can go with that any different way. You could say, oh, this is who he was against Washington when they upset the Huskies, or you could point to how he played on the road at Wazoo and got benched in the second half. Like, I think, but then again, I think that's like a Power 5 average type quarterback. And so if you have Bourguet for whatever the next 2 games until you're bye, like, who knows? Like, like maybe you can. It's all about just like running a functional offense, and like that sounds dumb to say, but that's not what was happening for pretty much the entire season up to this game. Most of
Right.
it,
No, I don't think
offense.
that's dumb. I don't think that's dumb at all. I think that's exactly what
No,
it
that's
is.
done. Done.
Yeah.
I didn't. Yeah.
Well,
Um,
yeah. No, I was just gonna say too. I think continuity, and that's kind of what we've both hit on a little bit, has been the biggest thing that's been lacking, right? And like
yeah.
building that offense and building on what they've done so far is going to take like a level of comfort on Dillingham's part to call what he wants to call and feel confident in the fact that he has a quarterback that can run the type of offense he wants to run, and a quarterback who can execute that at a high level, right? It cuts both ways there. So again, we'll see what we got with Bourguet this season. He was a little back and forth last year. I mean, we talked about it in the offseason coming into this year, how we both, and we talked with Ralph
Yeah.
about this too, talking about how Bourguet should be the guy, and the talent level that Bourguet, the talent that Bourguet is. So it'll be interesting. He's got his chance now again, and nobody's going to be, barring injury, we probably won't see Conover. It's probably going to end up being Bourguet's show for the foreseeable future, regardless. I mean, however long Pine is out, but again, I want to see that continuity develop a little bit on this offense. And now that we know, I mean, Dillingham took over play calling. He's not going to give it back, right? Like this is kind of Dillingham's show, this
Not
Bourguet
after
show, for
last
better
game.
or worse. Right,
Not
right.
after
For better
last
or
game.
worse. For
Yeah.
better or worse, these are the two guys. And they're going to have to figure it out together at this point and at least be competitive, right?
Yeah.
That's all we're asking here. We're not asking them to go out and pull off upsets as 12-point dogs. That's what a lot of this season is going to be. All we're asking for is incremental game or gains, and then maybe by the end of the season you put a product together that could maybe steal a game or two. But I'm not optimistic so much in wins.
Oh yeah, the winning, like, I don't want to, like, we're going to talk about this later in the show, but like these next 2 games against Cal and Colorado, they are winnable.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to be like, oh, they're ASU's going to win. Now, maybe if Colorado suffers some more injuries against USC, then maybe I will move towards ASU, because I think look, I'll say this: ASU's defense is better than like Colorado's defense, and ASU's defense, like, look, the final number, look, they gave up 42 points, and USC ran for 213 yards on them too. So like, it wasn't some perfect game. But first of all, they made USC punt twice. So
That's a
we
feat.
got to see Eddie Czaplicki at Sun Devil Stadium once again. And like, I didn't expect them to force USC to punt twice. Like, and one of those was in the first half too. So like, that is a good sign from the defense. They put pressure on Williams. Obviously, he was able to get away a few times and make some, crazy Caleb Williams plays. Can't really do anything about that. Uh, I am encouraged by this defense, and I think that I really want to see how they look against Cal this weekend because, whatever, like Cal's offense isn't that good. It's better than maybe it has been in years past, but I don't think it's not USC. It's probably not even Fresno State's offense, honestly. So I think that there's a real potential there to have I think there's potential to give up like less than 20 points to Cal on the road. We don't know if that's going to happen, but the defense looks like it looks real. It doesn't look like it's like it played USC's offense better than any other team they've played. And that sounds,
Definitely.
yeah. And they haven't played great teams, but
They held them
USC
to
had to
under
work
50 points. That doesn't happen very
Yeah.
often in this, or it hasn't happened very often in the Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams short era. But
No,
it's something that a
exactly.
lot of teams don't do, and they held them to under 50 points. So
Exactly. Yeah. And they had to work for those. Like, it wasn't just, easy to do. Like, they held them to some field goals. And, I'm encouraged with it. I really am. And so obviously you're grading on a curve against USC. And, I'm not expecting them to go up to Seattle and hold the Huskies to like 25 points or anything. Like when you're playing some of these insane offenses in the Pac-12 this year, you just got to tip your hat. Like, it is what it is. But just to actually like show like a meaningful, like tangible, like, hey, like ASU's defense actually made things more difficult for USC. Like, I've said it already in this, but it's really encouraging.
100%. I completely agree. I think looking at this schedule, Cal might be next to U of A, the last truly in Colorado to an extent. And you can rank those three however you see fit. One of the last like most winnable games on this schedule.
Yeah.
It's going to be extremely tough. So once you move beyond this game against Cal, there's not going to be a lot of opportunity for wins, truthfully. So whatever happens against Cal, it's going to be a good sort of litmus test for where they are against teams that are a little closer to where they're at. Cal obviously is a better team than ASU, but they're not USC. So
No.
they are a little bit closer to where ASU is currently. So that's going to be a good metric to go off of based on how they play against a team that they're not completely outclassed by.
Yeah, this weekend, I think this weekend will be a huge like litmus test
There
for
you
the
go.
Sun
I think I
Devils.
said it wrong too. It's all
Yeah,
good.
it's just one of those words that gets
I know what you're
all the
saying.
time. Yeah. Anyway, it will be a good indicator for the rest of the season. Like, what's it going to look like? Like, is it going to be like if they go on the road at Cal and they lose like 27-10, that's going to be really, really discouraging. Not like big picture of the program or anything like that, just in terms of this season. But I'll say this. So with the next two opponents ASU plays, the other two, Colorado and Cal played Washington. Colorado played at Oregon. Colorado was down 45-12 at halftime to Washington. Colorado was down like 35-0 and lost 42-6. They got like what happened to those two teams against the elite teams in the Pac-12 is what people thought would happen to ASU against USC.
Mm-hmm.
But that ASU lost in like, it's a weird way to say it, but like an NFL blowout, like maybe not even that, but like, although I guess USC didn't score 70 points, but but like it felt like it was just a much more competitive game. And
yeah,
granted, the big caveat is ASU played that game at home and those other two games were on the road. But my point with this is like, we've saw like if you're just juxtaposing these low-level Pac-12 teams up against league contenders, ASU fared the best out of those three. Now, again, it's home and road matters, but I mean, playing at Cal, I don't know if ASU is going to be that like no one's going to be scared of playing at Cal, you know?
Right.
And the other
Yeah.
thing is a lot of times what happens when you go to Cal or you go to Stanford or go to Boston College in the ACC like Florida State did, there's just the atmosphere is just not that good. And so teams like don't get as hyped up to play oftentimes. But I cannot see that being an issue with ASU because they haven't won a game. They haven't won a conference game. The only game they've won is against Southern Utah. So there's no
Right.
excuses on that front. Like I don't think I'm not expecting that.
No, I mean either. And you have like you're human beings. You have to be aware of the schedule. Like you have to recognize like, hey, if we don't get this one, it's gonna be tough. Like we play
Yeah.
some really good teams. And you don't want your only win of the season to be against Southern Utah after, what was it, a 3-point win against Southern Utah. Like in terms of wins and losses, we're talking about moral victories and everything else, and that's all great, but that would be nobody wants that out of this season, and I don't think anybody's more motivated than the players to avoid that, right? Like they have to be.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at Cal, this is probably your best opportunity next to U of A and possibly Colorado. Colorado could get Travis Hunter back that week and just completely
That would be
roll
a big
over ASU.
that would
Maybe
make a
he's
difference. Yeah.
100%. So, I mean, Cal and U of A, those are the two that it's like, okay, they could get a win these weeks. The other weeks, I'm not very optimistic. Like, I mean, I kind of mentioned it earlier, watching that USC game, it never really felt like, hey, ASU could win this game. They were in it, but you were like, they just don't have the firepower that a USC does. And they're not really going to have the firepower that an Oregon has, or, I mean, even a Utah has.
Well,
Like,
Utah, I'm not worried for them. It's not firepower. We're playing
it's
them
well,
at
defensive firepower.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And we're playing that
yeah.
game on the road in November. Like,
At Rice
good luck
Eccles,
with that.
it's
Yeah.
yeah. No, so I mean that's kind of what it comes down to is this and maybe uh, um like UCLA is on the schedule, right or no?
Yeah, they're on the road.
Okay,
I don't
that
think
one
they're
too,
like
maybe, but
yeah. With UCLA, I don't think they're like that scary, but they're just better than we are. Like they're just a better team, you know?
right,
Right. And
right,
so
and that there's a lot of that on this schedule.
yes.
There's a lot of like maybe they're not USC, but they're definitely better.
Yeah. And you
So
could throw Cal into that category too, by the way. Like
right,
it's a winnable game, but that doesn't mean like anyone should be predicting ASU to win that game, you know? Because like
hmm
I was it was interesting to see ASU as 12-point underdogs. I will say that.
against that seems high.
Yeah,
Um,
it does.
but that's also like pretty precarious to me. Is like
Oh, yeah.
is ASU capable of covering that? They just came off of their best performance of the season. I mean, is that a sign of things to come, or is that kind of like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? So
Right.
I
Well,
don't know. We'll see what
that's the
happens.
big question out of the USC game is like how much of this can be transferred into future games? Because, there was a lot of discussion about possibly going 1-11 last week after the Fresno State game. And now after seeing the USC game, it's like for me, like I get that USC's defense has its issues, but it's still hard for me to believe that a 1-11 team could be that competitive with USC, if that makes sense. Because we
I
saw
mean,
USC completely blow the doors off Stanford, and like that's what it
yeah,
looks like when a 1-11 type team plays them. You know what I'm saying?
I completely agree, and I don't think it's the reflection of ASU's talent level in terms of like chalking them up to being they're a 1-11 team.
Right.
On the other side of that also is like where are the wins? You know what
Right.
I'm
No.
saying?
Yeah.
Like looking at the schedule, it's like I agree they're probably in any other conference, which is
Right.
crazy to say, maybe they do get a couple more wins because it's usually like, the Pac-12 and historically the Pac-12 has been just like they 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 kill each other, right? That's why the Pac-12 hasn't had much
Yeah.
representation on the national stage, is because they always beat up on their best candidates, right? But
Right.
this year, I think it's so top heavy, and there's so much talent, or not even top heavy, but much more like
Yeah.
last week we had 6 or 7 teams in the Pac-12 ranked, right?
It was 8.
8. There you go. Like, it's not even top heavy at this point. Arguably, if you're talking about representation on the national stage, the Pac-12, they had to have had the most ranked teams, right?
The new AP poll came out and there was like 7 SEC teams ranked, but I think it's like a lot of those teams it was like 3 SEC teams in like the final 20 through 25. So it's like that can change so quickly. But
either way, though, the point is like there isn't, like, you have to find the wins on this schedule, and I just do not know where they are. So talent-wise, you might be looking at a team, and it's crazy to say because I can't remember the last time this was the case with the Pac-12, that's playing in such a talented conference right now. For the swan song of the Pac-12, but such a talented conference that it's like I don't know where they're going to get that additional win. I mean, we might catch a team on the right day, who knows, but it's tough to find the wins on this schedule.
Well, yeah, I think so for me, in terms of like being a little bit more optimistic about this season, it's not so much like picking off who you're going to beat throughout the schedule, the rest of the schedule. It's more just like, if you play like with this level of effort, with this level of competence, like you're just going to nab somebody one game, because teams aren't going to be like that motivated to play ASU either. That's another thing. So
I agree. But the thing is, man, like that's the thought. And I'm looking at the schedule again too, and it's like, I mean, you would have expected. I guess Oregon was probably extremely motivated to play Colorado, but like going through this schedule, it's Cal, Colorado, Washington, Wazoo, Utah, UCLA, Oregon, U of A. U of A is like, U of A and Cal are the 2 games that are like, those could be your shots, and one of them is the last game of the season. So yeah, but I get what you're saying too. No, I understand what you're saying in the sense that, like, if this effort level stays where it's at, you're gonna hang with one of these teams. But my thought too, that the thing that I'm struggling with is, I don't think effort is enough to make up for the talent disparity with some of these teams. Wazoo looks so good. Utah's defense is unreal. Oregon just destroyed a team that who knows how good Colorado actually is. They probably overachieved coming in, but nobody thought they'd be shut out by Oregon. Like it's kind of insane how well this conference has performed this year. And that gap between ASU on their best day and these teams on their worst days, I don't know if they're even close.
Well, I mean, I disagree with that, because we just saw them hang with USC. So like, and the other thing is, like, ASU last year was bad and they beat Washington, a Washington team that was 1 game away from going to the college football playoff. So
that is true.
I just like, point. I think, like, I don't know. I get where you're coming from, but teams can have injuries, and ASU, like, it'll probably, I mean, have to be a home game that they win, that they would, like.
Yeah.
Could they beat Wazoo at home? I mean, unlikely, but it's more likely than them beating Oregon Oregon. It's more likely than them beating Washington on the road or Utah on the road, And the other thing is, I will say this, like, it was a packed house at Sun Devil Stadium. A lot of that's kind of just because it's USC and Parents Weekend and stuff like that. But it was a packed house. You could tell they fed off the energy. I think if you look at the schedule for the home games, Colorado, that is going to be sold out. Like, people are going to go to that game. Hosting Washington State is iffy, but it's Halloween weekend, and it'll be most likely a ranked
weekend.
Yeah, but it'll most likely be
ASU tradition.
That's right.
Unlike any other.
But it'll most likely be a ranked Wazoo team. So, like, there'll probably be a good crowd for that game. And then you have Oregon, good crowd for that game, and U of A. So that could mitigate it.
Yeah.
Again, like not, yeah, but
No, I completely agree with you. I get what you're saying too, and I'm probably being too pessimistic about it. It is college football. So much wild stuff happens week to week in terms of parity. Like you can't really track any of this stuff consistently.
right.
And maybe I'm just giving way too much credit for what I've seen from Washington and Oregon and Utah and even Colorado to an extent. And they're probably going to get another win or two, maybe.
Yeah,
It,
yeah. This is the diff. Like they're not going 4-8. Like I'm not like
no,
it's 3
no,
and 9, 2 and 10. That's where they're at. But like I just don't think they're just going to lose every game out. I
I
just don't.
agree. Let me say this: I would not be shocked at all if they finished with the one win. I would not look at that as wow, this is a very shocking outcome given where we are right now.
Right,
I would not be surprised if all of these teams, because all of these teams beating ASU is what they are supposed to do, right?
right.
None of these teams are supposed to lose to ASU. That doesn't mean they won't, but and things aren't going to go according to plan. That's where I'm like, they probably get at least one more win. But you're 100% right. This is a 2 to 3 win team in the best possible scenario. Where we're sitting right now, I would say 3 wins is the ceiling.
Yeah,
Like
it
that's
feels
that's as good as it gets. Yeah.
well, and that's why obviously the injuries threw all this out of whack. But that's
Mhm.
why losing to Oklahoma State and losing to Fresno State, like that's why those hurt, especially Oklahoma State. Look, I mean, now that they're not a good team. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, but
And you get the lead on them too. And I mean, we've already talked about that,
yeah,
but you're 100% right. Is like looking back on those losses, especially those games being at home, right? And then looking at the road trips that they still have to take and the teams that are coming to Tempe, those do feel like huge missed opportunities in the grand scheme of what they can accomplish this year. Um, but again, it's not like they're missing out on a bowl game, so
yeah,
I guess the Tony the Tiger Bowl will have to wait a year for ASU to make their triumphant return.
of course. Well, and I think when we end this little part of it, just be a tough out for the rest of the year. That should
Yeah,
be, and that's what you were against USC.
100%. I agree with that.
Yeah. All right. Well, before the game, there was a report from Doug Franz, who used to be a morning show host at 98.7 Arizona Sports. And he tweeted out that Ray Anderson has resigned. It was refuted. I'm trying to pull up the tweet from Chris Cartman right now, but what Cartman said was basically while some boosters uh, are encouraged that Ray Anderson could be gone soon. It's not happening right now. So, kind of a little tease. Yeah, okay, here we go. September 23rd. Some prominent ASU boosters are under the impression there could be an imminent change in ASU's AD leadership, but I have not been able to substantiate this report. As far as I can tell, Anderson remains in this role. So, the reason I bring all this up is because when you have Cartman, he's not saying like, "Oh, Ray Anderson isn't going anywhere." It's I can't substantiate this exact report, but there are boosters who seem to think it could happen, and that's the encouraging part to me. That this could find like, and I spoke about on my last show. Again, Cartman went on radio and he said that there are prominent boosters who won't donate to anything until Anderson is gone, which is kind of you know, I could go both ways on that. Like, if you really like ASU, you should just donate anyway. But again, not my money, so whatever. It's to me, it's just very interesting that like there's more and more kind of rumblings about Ray Anderson potentially resigning or being gone or something.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like, based on what Cartman is saying, is like It's not a yes, but it's not a no. Like anytime you get something like that where it's the response is I can't substantiate it.
Yes.
Usually anything that's like misinformation is like aggressively denied and aggressively refuted. Like just extremely right off the bat, this isn't true, this isn't happening. And we didn't get that. Maybe Doug Franz jumped the gun a little bit. Maybe that's what we got. I know that news came out right before or maybe like 2 hours before the USC game, right on Saturday. At least that's when you sent me that tweet.
Yeah. Around then.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I mean, that's a huge scoop. That's a bombshell report, especially given the fact that all that we've heard as far as actual movement on that front was people wanting gone, but no, like, yeah, this could happen being being reported up to that point. So I'm not saying Doug Franz is wrong at all. I think he was on to something, and then it immediately like maybe he jumped the gun, and now they have to put the fire out a little bit. And that's kind of what's happening, and that's why it's like no, nothing is coming out for Cartman to confirm. Again, that's all speculation. You don't really know what's happening, but based on what Cartman was given in terms of like I can't substantiate it, it sounds like everybody's being it's more hush hush than it is like no, this isn't without a doubt this isn't happening.
Yeah.
Does that make
And
sense?
so I listened to Doug Franz's podcast on Monday, and on his Monday show, he referenced his tweet, and he basically said like I deserve to be blamed for the report because the wording is wrong, and I shouldn't have said he's resigned. But what he said on the show was something to the lines of what I should have said was there have been discussions in the background about what the steps would be for Ray Anderson to resign. And so,
and I'm sure that's accurate.
Yes. And that makes so much more sense, and it makes sense why it was taken down, because it is inaccurate that he hasn't, like, Ray Anderson as of, September 27th is employed by ASU. So it's an incorrect report. But
Yeah.
listening to that podcast, it's like, okay, like the wheels are in motion. And like it's kind of weird because it's like people have just been talking about this for so much, and you have national people who are like, how is this person still there? And now it's also like, oh, this could be over soon, even though everyone's like kind of just strapped in for it not to be over soon.
Yeah, and it's that kind of like that corny journalism school dilemma of, should I be right or should I be first? And
You should be right.
obviously, 100%. And that's no, I'm not asking.
Oh no, yeah. No, I got you.
No, I'm just bringing it up as like that's the classic. Like I know nothing about this field. Here's a dilemma that really isn't even a dilemma, but we're gonna package it as like a thought exercise. You obviously always you emphasize accuracy, and I think now more than ever in the age where you can just click a button and something is live, I think reporters and people in those positions are faced with those dilemmas, right? Especially somebody like Doug Franz who's doing something independently, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Right. So he's doing something independently, and when you're doing something on your own, scoops like that could be huge for you, right? And the whole operation that you're running. Obviously, now it hurts him a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Until something comes out, I'm sure he's walked it back a little bit. But I mean, when you tweet something like that, and regardless of your intent, nobody knows your intent. They just know what they're seeing right in front of them.
Right.
So that's, I'm sure there's truth behind what he sort of amended on his podcast, and the discussions have happened. How could they have not happened at this point?
Well,
right. So
yeah.
I mean, but given Michael Crow, you can't ever assume that anything logical from the sports perspective would happen. But again, it's like it's so important to be accurate in what you're reporting. We both know that. Everybody knows that. But I that's what's like troublesome sometimes. You see people who have held high positions in journalism who seem to have forgotten that fact, or get too excited by like, oh, I have this scoop, let me send it out immediately. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I don't think the thing with Franz is like he apparently used to be like one of the people who worked for the ASU radio. I think he was like the sideline. I don't know, but like that means you know people at ASU. And again, this is just from his
Right.
podcast. He said that he talked with multiple people, multiple sources, and it wasn't all nailed down correctly. But for me, like the interesting thing for me is just that like this might actually happen, and it's just I just
Oh,
wonder like
100%.
I just wonder what the windfall could be like just with him if it really has gotten this toxic, which it appears to have gotten. Like what is the potential NIL uh money, what is the potential threshold ASU could reach if disaffected boosters start coming back into the fold? To me, like that is a very big like if it really is this bad, because there's part of me that's like, okay, like how many people could really be this upset about it? But apparently it's a good chunk and it's important people. So that's just like that could help. Like let's just say this happens by the end of the season. Like all of a sudden it's transfer portal season and ASU has more money than people expect. Like that could that could really change this roster quickly. Like Ray Anderson being gone, it's not going to get a new basketball arena built, and it's not, like there's still going to be a lot of
No.
other issues that stem from Michael Crow.
That's what I was going
But
to say. Michael Crow isn't going with Ray Anderson.
no, but if Anderson is an impediment for whatever reason, for people not donating to NIL, people not, whatever, which really is just about NIL at this point. Um, then him being gone, like that could be big. It could be big, and so especially like you have Cartman, he's done local interviews on radio stations, and like he's said pretty clearly that like it would be better for ASU athletics if Ray Anderson wasn't there and he knows what's going on. So, it's just potentially big, and it's something to watch for as we roll into the winter.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep an eye on it. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm sure where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Like there has to be something happening here. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on it, I guess.
For sure. It's so weird. Like it's just because like people were just kind of because of Michael Crow, people that ASU fans were just like, this isn't going to happen. Like it should have happened already. Should have happened a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever. And so now it's just kind of like the adjustment of like, oh, like this, this might actually happen. And so at least for me, so it's just interesting because the thing is like he's been the AD there for what since like 2015. Like we were like it feels like our sophomore year of college or around then, and so like it's been a while. I think you froze out there a
That seems
little
like the
bit.
right time frame. But I was just saying, am I back?
Yeah.
Am I okay? I was just saying, yeah, freshman or sophomore seems like the right time frame. So 2014, 15, something like that. I mean, I could easily look it up, but if we're just going to estimate, that sounds about right.
I think this is an estimation type show, Colton. We're just gonna
Yeah, we don't do a lot of legwork here.
go off vibes.
We just kind
Uh,
of talk.
yeah, exactly. All
We
right.
don't do a lot
Well,
of that reporting or sourcing or any of that.
yeah. No, we don't. But we also aren't trying to be newsbreakers either.
No,
So
we have zero scoops for you.
yeah.
Um, you're just here to listen to us talk and to see Mark's face.
See Colton's beautiful face as well. All right. Well, before we head out, let's give some predictions for the Cal game. Colton, how do you think this one goes?
My my instinct here, and I don't know how much you trust that as a reliable metric. We'll say reviews are mixed at best when we're talking about my instincts. Um, my instinct here is this spread is too high in favor of Cal. 12 points feels like a lot for me. Um, especially it comes down to two things, right? Is what we saw against USC and the effort we saw against USC sustainable,
Yep.
or was that like get up, it's USC, play the game of your life, and then we're primed for a letdown when they get to Cal? Those are the two options here. And then I mean, obviously you're going to have a new quarterback under center again. So what
Yep.
is Dillingham going to feel comfortable running? I know we'll see a heavy dose of Scadaboo until his legs fall off. He's going to be running the ball. It clearly doesn't matter. He's going to get his touches, which could bode well for us. He seems to be the engine.
Yeah.
So again, it's hard because you don't know. You're basically predicting whether or not a team that we have, like, I don't even have words in terms of like, we don't even know what to expect from them on a week to week basis to this point. We don't know who they are. They don't really have much of an identity yet. Dillingham taking over the play calling is like a step in the right direction, but it's hard because what are we going to get? I feel like 12 points is too many. If we're going spread picks, I think ASU covers this spread.
No, I'm saying like final score. Who wins?
No. I know.
Okay.
I'm working up to it, Mark. This is my process.
Filibustering.
Yeah, I think they have to know this is one of their few good opportunities
Realistic
to win a
opportunity.
game.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's going to play a role. I think they're in this to the end, but I still don't know if they get it done. I think Cal wins by 4 to 7 points. I'm going 24-20. No, give me 27. Wait, 31-24 Cal.
Okay. There we go. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think it'll be a competitive game, but the score that's floating in my head is 27-21 Cal, and I'm going to go with that. Look, I haven't watched a ton of Cal. They have not. I think they kind of threw people a little off the scent in week one by just destroying North Texas. Since then, they scored 10 points against Auburn. They let Idaho hang around way too long, and then they got killed by UW. Uh, but I still think they're. I think the fact that they're favored by 12 points is like an indication from Vegas that like this could be a decent game, but Cal's still better. And so I'm just going to go Cal 27-21. Hope I'm wrong, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. 27-21 sounds a little more realistic. I got to stick with what I'm going with. Actually, 28-24 Cal.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Well, that's
I'm
the
a
same
coward.
basic. Yeah.
I'm
Missed field goal game.
spineless.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for listening. We'll be back mid next week. And yeah, as always, go Devils.